So
You're the official.
Good evening. I'd like to call our meeting to order and invite you to join me in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Desai. Mrs. Freiberg. Here. Ms. Dr. Hessen.
Here.
Mr. Robinson. Here. Mr. Sanders.
here.
Mrs. San Martin.
Here.
Mrs. Schrader.
Here.
Dr. Sullivan.
Here.
Mrs. Turner.
Here.
Madam President, there are 8 present, 1 absent this evening.
Thank you. This is a reminder to please silence your cell phone during our meeting. And this is the first opportunity for public comment and opportunities to be heard by the board on agenda items only. Comments are to be directed to the entire board, not one individual board member, administrator, staff member, or the audience. Comments will be timed and limited to 3 minutes or less. Please note, board and staff members will not normally respond to comments or questions during the meeting. When you hear your name called, please come forward. You do not need to state your name or address before sharing your remarks. Kathy Schaefer, Spring Garden Township. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. I'd like to reiterate my wellness questions prior to the vote. Wondering if you could confirm that revisions will be sought when the new pool classroom is operational, and further, if consideration will be given to returning swimming to the curriculum in order to provide a life-saving skill for our students. And hopefully you'll be able to speak to this when that vote comes up. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth Wall, Spring Garden Township. Hello, good evening.
Since our community is on the cusp of another school board election, I'd like to say in the 2 years that I've been attending meetings and witnessing true actions, this present legislative body that governs our school district is in dereliction of duty and needs to be replaced. The Pennsylvania Education Law Center says school boards are accountable to the residents of the district they serve. Well, what has happened to York Suburban School District? Time and time again, the majority of this board has proven you are partisan and deaf to many community members who come to your meetings and earnestly trying to communicate their interests to you. The candidates you support and push outright partisan tactics and lies. Some of the most promptness voiced in several meetings that no matter how many residents show up, voice concerns, you are moving forward with your interests. Taxation without representation. Spending $2.4 million
Pardon me,
with
ma'am.
little, yes.
You need to please stick with your topic you suggested,
It's the intermediate.
the intermediate project. Well, I
Yes.
haven't heard the intermediate project mentioned yet.
Okay, this is
Please
all
get
about
to
the
the point about the intermediate
project. Spending $2.4 million with little to show in 2 years. This is how fair representation to residents who care and are not partisan, but just want fiscal responsibility. How can you promote you have the community's interests at hand? Sadly, not all who vote actually fund the majority of the district expenses, nor have lived in the majority of their lives in this community, and this is where many feel frustrated by your absolute biased approach. Our only opportunity for change is one day every 2 years. This is our only voice with this board because after the likes of you are elected, your duty has proven to stop many. You do not represent the entire community, you divided it, and you boldly do not care. To the taxpayers of Spring Garden and Spring and Sperry Townships who do not believe in tearing down repairable buildings, polluting our earth more, disrupting perfectly fine neighborhoods, transporting young children across town, tying up parents with more transportation time and liability, spending others' money with little to no accountability, here lies your true representation. The board's pundits come to this mic, mock, harass, slander others, and you allow it. Your leadership is immensely embarrassing and frankly despicable. It became extremely obvious you and your candidates have a political agenda. In this past primary and now upcoming election, by the tactics and lies being spread, I used to be proud of this school district and its leadership, and it has become glaringly apparent. Our children and our community are your political pawns. The truth will be exposed no matter the outcome of this election, and how our children and community are being used for a political playbook of local and state control since the federal peace was recently lost.
Thanks very much. Thank you. And that concludes the first opportunity for public comment. Mr. McKay, Student Board Representative report, please. Hi, McKay.
Hi.
Mr. Peterkin, excuse me.
Okay. Good evening. To begin with athletics, this past week the football team, along with the cheerleaders and marching band, all celebrated their senior nights, recognizing the accomplishments of their seniors in the final year of high school. Additionally, freshman Austin Kirk from the football team was recently voted Athlete of the Week after passing for 219 yards and throwing for 3 touchdowns in the team's game against Connecticut. The boys soccer team plays in the district semifinals today against Susquehanna, and next Tuesday they play the first round of states. The volleyball team also plays tomorrow in the district semifinals in Middletown. In closing activities, the high school's music department hosted its annual fall music concert. This event was attended by members of the community and showcased performances from the high school ensembles. Additionally, York Suburban students participated in the York County Choir Festival at Dover Area High School on October 18th. Students from across the county rehearsed advanced choral pieces before performing a joint concert that afternoon. 10 York Suburban students represented our school, with Sarah Dahl earning a solo performance. On October 25th, the PMEA district choir auditions were held, and junior Ethan Wolfgang and senior Ruth Brown were both selected to be members of the district choir. Service and leadership continues to be strong at York Suburban. On October 25th, the Diversity and Activism Club, National Honor Society, and FCCLA all collaborated to prepare and serve food for more than 150 individuals experiencing food and housing insecurity in downtown York. Special thanks to Mrs. Ohout from National Honor Society and Mrs. Feltenberger for FCCLA for organizing this meaningful outreach event. Continuing with student involvement, our Link Group continues to build community and school spirit through a variety of events. Their pumpkin carving and painting competition on October 30th brings students together for a fall fun, with prizes awarded for creativity and school spirit. Additionally, their monthly Freshman Friday Flex events, including games like basketball, dodgeball, and boat on Sundays, help freshmen connect and make friends to feel part of the Trojan family. Trojan Gazette, our student-run newspaper, is also experiencing exciting developments. With their current president graduating this spring, Michaela Soares is transitioning into the leadership role and has continued the Gazette's tradition of excellence in reporting on school events and issues. This year, they launched a monthly podcast, another great way for students to engage with school news. Another reminder that the fall play, Radium Girls, will be performed on November 6th, 7th, and 8th. We encourage everyone to come out and support the students' hard work. To end with academics, in English 2 classes, along with students from all upper grade levels, are participating in this year's Poetry Out Loud competitions. The students select a poem, memorize it, and recite it for their class, with winners advancing into the school-wide competition on December 11th. We look forward to seeing their creativity and confidence on display once again this year. Also, on October 14th, sophomores experienced the JA STEM Summit, where they went to different stations about trades and other STEM-related events. These stations help them learn more about STEM and help them learn about future pathways in their career and career choices in the future. At the middle school, a new special education classroom has been established to help students in autistic support and attentive learning support programs develop important daily living and vocational skills. The room is designed to resemble a home environment, completed with a refrigerator, couch, bed, kitchen table, and even a hydroponics tower. This initiative was made possible thanks to Ms. Lard and Dr. Sneddon, and several other staff members who donated furniture and helped bring this vision to life for the students. Finally, Ms. Holman's anatomy and physiology class, the students are preparing to become our future nurses and doctors. They recently completed an intensive lab practical identifying all the bones of the human body and will soon begin studying muscles and muscular diseases. Meanwhile, students in the EMT course have been working closely with their EMS partners at YAUFR and WellSpan, practicing patient assessments, taking vitals, and running through various patient care scenarios to build real-world readiness before assisting in emergency care. This concludes my report.
Thank you. Anything for Mackay? Thank you. Good job. Moving on to the board president's report. It's my duty to report that the board met in a conferencing session on Tuesday, October 14th at 5:30 p.m. for the purpose of board professional development. And before we get too deeply into tonight's meeting, I need to address the conduct at our last board session and review expectations of each of us as York Suburban School Board directors. As a board, we are entrusted by our community to lead with integrity, respect, and professionalism. Our meetings are a forum for thoughtful collaboration and deliberation, not division or disruption, even when we disagree. Every board member has both the right and the responsibility to share their perspective, but we must do so within the bounds of mutual respect and proper decorum. School board meetings are not designed as forums for cross-examination and interrogation. Individual board members have no individual legal authority to poll fellow members. Such behavior disrespects the process we are all here to uphold and will not be tolerated. Each member has equal rights and obligations to foster discussion that complies with board policy, principles of governance, Robert's Rules of Order, the Sunshine Law, and the First Amendment right to speak or to be silent. It is also essential to remember that the work of this board is non-partisan. We operate as one collective body, not as individuals pursuing personal or political agendas. The politics surrounding upcoming elections have no place within the operations of our regularly scheduled meetings. Let me be clear. Interrupting others, shouting, launching personal attacks at fellow board members or our guests, or disregarding my direction as the duly elected board president are unacceptable and will not be tolerated. I expect all board members to uphold the standard of conduct outlined in the Principles for Governance and Leadership, signed by each of us, and to engage in discussion professionally and respectfully. We have important work to do, and our students deserve a board that models the decorum expected of hardworking public servants.
Madam President,
Moving
I have
on.
a question.
No,
for you.
Mr. Sanders,
I
you're
have
out
a
of
question
order.
for your report.
No.
When you say cross-examined, are you saying that you're limiting our
We're
ability to ask
moving.
questions?
Mr. Sanders, I am not limiting your opportunity to ask questions.
Well, what is cross-examined?
We're going to move on.
I just want to clarify.
No, you're out of order. Treasurer's report.
Thank
In Mr. Desai's absence, Mrs. Kindick.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Desai asked that I report the following. Year-to-date, our general fund revenues are $44.8 million against a budget of $75.1 million, which is 59.7% of the budget. Year-to-date, general fund expenditures are $10.3 million against a budget of $76.8 million, which is 13.5% of the budget. Our revenues are greater than our expenses by $34.5 million at this point in the year. Our interest income for the month was $169,135. I would also just like to add, we've been talking a lot about the state budget. With its impasse, we are currently short in revenues by $2.3 million, which would have generated approximately $13,000 in additional interest income for the first quarter of the year. And then as of the end of October, we would typically be receiving an additional $1.75 million in state revenues. So that's currently what we're short due to that budget impasse. Before you, the treasurer's report is a consent agenda items. Would any board member like any of those considered separately, or are there any questions on these items? If not, I would ask that a motion be made to approve the treasurer's report.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Are there votes to the contrary?
I vote no.
Any other dissenting votes?
Motion passes
7 to 1. Thank you.
and that concludes the treasurer's report.
Thank you for filling in. Administrative reports. Dr. Krauser, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, everyone. A few items to highlight this evening. As we heard a little bit during our student representative report, I'm going to highlight some similar items as well as recognize a few others. The month of October, we've been celebrating our principals. We've done that both through social media. Each building's been doing their own recognition, but I think it's just a moment to shine light on the incredible hard work of our leaders at the building level. Each day, they're greeting our students, they're engaging with the staff and the community, and really building that community environment. So we're continuing to celebrate them in both ways for the rest of the month as we celebrate our principals. The next item that I have is the celebration and recognition of our National Merit Scholarship Program. It is one of the most prestigious and highly competitive academic programs across the United States. Out of the 15.1 million U.S. high school students, only about 16,000 students earn the distinction as a semifinalist. We are very fortunate this year to have senior Mike Feremsky as one of those semifinalists. He will move forward in that scholarship competition, and we wish him the best of luck in that process. You can see on that next photo as we move across, in addition to Mikey and our semifinalists, we have 4 seniors that are named commended students. And I want to make sure I send a congratulations to Rowan Goals, Emma Bates, Jem Miller, and Amara Burgraff, who are also being recognized for their hard work. Continuing again with recognition, recently, as we heard in the student report, our students shared their voices at the York County Choral Festival, hosted at Dover Area High School. Samara Dalton, Sarah Uchef, Ruthie Brown, Sarah Dahl, Lucy Thompson, Aaron West, Ethan Wolfgang, Ian Klein, Willow Hoffman-Smith, and Lorene Mungai were all part of that amazing team that celebrated and sang. And a special shout out, as was mentioned, to Sarah, who was selected to perform a solo in that concert. So kudos to their hard work, and I know that's not only a student celebration, but to our music department and to the families who have been moving those students to and from practices. It certainly takes a lot. In addition, a special celebration to some middle school artists who participated in this year's Lions International Peace Poster Contest. This was our first year participating in this worldwide contest, and it invites students to reflect on the meaning of peace and share their vision through art. So we want to congratulate first place to Mary Wogemuth, second place to Ann Eilerly, Shay Rodriguez, and Tess McMillans. And our first place winner was Mary, has advanced in that competition, so she'll continue to the next stage of that. Shout out to Mrs. McCullough, the middle school art teacher, for inspiring the students, and of course Wanda Reisinger and Dwight Hollenbach from the York County White Rose Lions. You can see in that picture for coming to the middle school to celebrate those students. In addition to our National Merit Program, Senior Mikey Ferminsky was also, alongside junior Eden Gracie, celebrated at York East Rotary Club Student of the Month. Mikey and Eden earned this recognition through their outstanding academic extracurricular achievements, so they're recognized in the morning breakfast with our East York Rotaries. Congratulations to them. And as was shared, we talked about our STEM Summit. And as Makai had mentioned, it was held at York Suburban High School. Sophomores were engaged in many hands-on activities in science, technology, engineering, and math, connecting the transfer, we say, as we learn it inside the classroom, into real-life careers. Special thanks to Junior Achievement of South Central Pennsylvania. We had many student volunteers and upperclassmen who helped out, as well as our 13 business partners for showing students how exciting the world of STEM can be. Transformed the gymnasium and a variety of different activities in both our auxiliary gyms as well as our large gym. So moving along, again, work as the collective across the district. I'd like to share a little bit of celebration and recognition to the district as we partner with Eyes of Hope and VisionWorks. This occurred last week. We provided free exams to over 80 York Suburban students. Thanks to the incredible Eyes of Hope team, students were able to not only engage in the vision screenings, but they actually were able to receive lenses and glasses at no cost to families. Most of those glasses were manufactured on site in a mobile lab, so students were able to walk out with glasses that day. There was a few that had some special prescriptions that they could pick up later, but the majority of the students were able to walk out with glasses that day. So huge thanks to our middle school team, Dr. Snedden, Brianna Durr, our social worker, and Ms. Casey Blum, our school nurse. A lot of hands on deck. We had students being transported across the district down to the middle school, but it was a great experience for all students involved. So we appreciate their efforts in that work, and kudos to the families and students that were able to benefit from that experience. The next item I'd like to share is I'm going to ask Dr. Jackson to come up and join us. One thing you've heard a little bit about during our PTO celebrations is the Valley View hive sorting. So I've asked Dr. Jackson to kind of talk a little bit about this PBIS. As you know, we talk about positive behavioral intervention supports, critical elements of that K-2 team, and they've got some great things happening in Valley View.
All right, well, good evening, directors. It's so great to be able to share this with you. I'm so excited to give you a little sneak peek into what we've been doing that's a little bit special this year, stepping up our PBIS systems and just adding that one more thing to help us be more of a community. So we launched a new system called the Hive system, and it's quickly becoming the heart of our school culture. Our tagline is 5 hives, 1 family. This started with our staff this summer. We had a PBIS trade day where we were able to really appreciate Andy Corbett, who comes to us from Maryland. He was a new hire this year, and he saw what we were doing. He saw the foundation that we had already established in our systems, and he knew we were ready for that next level up. So Mr. Corbett talked with us about what his school had done, which is similar to a system in a school in Atlanta, where they sort into houses. And he was able to, with the help of other team members, quickly integrate this into the system that we already had in place. Thus, the Hive system. Our staff members on opening day were sorted into hives, a little bit more messy than what you'll see tonight. We actually popped balloons and confetti came out, and we had songs playing. It was wonderful. So our staff have really embraced the idea of being in a hive themselves, mixing up teams, grade level teams, that kind of thing. It's been amazing. And then, of course, we had to involve the students. So if you see in those pictures, what you're looking at are our students who picked an egg out of the cafeteria. They had them all over the place. And then they had to hold, they were so patient, they had to hold that egg and walk back into the gymnasium. And they were told it only holds its magic if it's closed until we tell you to open it. It's very important you listen to these instructions. Hint. Then they opened it up, and the magic was the bracelet that they found inside was one of 5 colors, and that was one of our 5 hives. And each of our hives also has a virtue tied to it. And so in our hive meetings that occur once a month in the morning, students learn about one virtue. The entire building learns in their separate hive meetings about that virtue. And then we come together that afternoon and celebrate with competitions and community building, and again, discuss the virtue. So far we've talked about integrity a lot. Believe it or not, our students know if you ask them what is integrity, doing the right thing when no one is watching. So we're going through each one of those virtues, being very specific about teaching it to them. So if you will indulge me, I have some eggs, and I'd love for you to hold on to your egg and we'll release the magic together, so don't open it up. You may choose out of this basket. I'm not going to choose for you, so please don't think it's rigged. So if each school board member and Dr. Krauser could please take an egg. And so as that is going around, I do want to invite you at any time, if you would like, to come join our celebration or one of our class meetings once you find out what your hive is. We do hold them monthly, but they are random different dates, so I can get those dates to you just in case your calendar were open and you want to visit us on a hive day. We've had 2 so far, huge successes. Empathy is our pink hive's virtue. Acceptance is the blue hive. Integrity is with the green. Perseverance is yellow, and self-control is purple. All right, I see each of you has an egg. Feel free to open it up and reveal the magic. Hopefully it matches some of your outfits. If you come visit us, we do get all decked out. Today was the blue hive day, so I'm in blue. But I do not belong to a hive. I have to represent every color every time we get together, and that's been a lot of fun. So, any questions?
Have you talked to Yorkshire about them doing whatever they're doing over there to line up?
Absolutely, we have. So they're ahead of us on the virtue front, and their PBIS team has really been working on the deliberate teaching of the virtues that would tie to PBIS, and they are hoping to do a hive sorting next year.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Dr. that's a great question. That's been a great piece where Dr. Jackson and Mrs. Albright have been collaborating quite a bit, as mentioned. For those of you, we've talked a lot about that PBIS framework, which builds, and the teams that are working through it has become very collaborative for us. So, but a lot of magic happening at Valley View, and the students are certainly engaged and families on board as well. So, thank you, Dr. Jackson. The next item I'd like to share this evening, 2 weeks ago when we were here, we provided an update regarding the work on our project at the intermediate school and shared some information about our hope to make the Board of Supervisors agenda, which would have been last Thursday. I did share a communication that we had asked that the board remove us from that so that we could address some recent comments. I just want to highlight again the collaborative teams that are involved in this process. You can see on that slide we're talking about it. Crabtree, Rockwell Associates, who've been our architects of record for this project, Saxon Stumps, our lawyers and consultants, K&W Engineers, Spring-Spray Township's an integral part of that as we work with Lake Shooting Township, Raymond James and Associates through our financial planning process, and Fidavia Construction Management Consulting has been a critical part, an important part of that process as well. So, kind of as we shared last time, we wanted to come back this evening and provide a more detailed explanation of why we decided to remove ourselves from that agenda and address those topics. So I did ask a few members of the team, kind of trying to get everybody at the last minute, from Thursday to today. We were able to connect with Crabtree, K&W, and Fidavia. I'm going to ask that team to come on up to the front, have a seat, so we can go over our recent submittal. And what I'm going to ask them to do is kind of move through that process, bring up almost 100 years of expertise and experience in engineering, in project management, in collaborative work with townships and municipalities. So we brought the experience, we brought the expertise to move through those steps together, answer questions about what we've done today, and they're going to share some items. I know we were working on trying to provide the board with an update on each of those elements. So What I'm going to ask them to do is kind of work through their components, come back. When they're finished, they'll turn it back to me, and then we'll move through a process of these questions as they develop across the project.
Thank you, Dr. Krauser.
Sorry, can we have them introduce themselves so if we have questions later, we can address?
Absolutely. We're going to have them start. That's exactly where he was going next. You're good.
All right. I do believe the board has met John Michelle earlier. He's with Fidavia. We also have Mark Borowski here with KMW. He's the president of KMW. And Dan Scala, he is the president of Fidavia. So we have the entire team here today to talk to. We do want to review some of the events that happened. I do have a handout that I want to give to the board. And as I'm distributing the handout, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Borowski, who's going to give a little background on how we got to where we are.
Good evening, board members and administration. Again, Mark Borowski, I'm the president of KMW Engineers. So as Seth's handing those out, I thought it might be helpful to do, I don't want to turn back time, but just give a little bit of kind of history to get us to how we are and where we are today. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better? Oh, sorry. Okay. So this process really initiated with the township back in March of 2024. That was a sketch plan review process. We met with township staff. It's a typical process for us to go and sit down with municipal staff in advance of making a submission, just to kind of walk through the project, trying to manage expectations about desired schedule, and also to just flesh out any questions or concerns they may have. So that process goes back to March of 2024, and I will say that the plan that was shared in that sketch plan review is extremely similar to what has ultimately been approved, meaning there has been very little change to the plan drawings over that time period. We actually talked a little bit about turning movements, which I'm going to come back to a little later, because that's the most recent bit of information that the township has asked us to expand on. So fast forward just a little bit, that was in March. We made our first land development plan submission. If you're not familiar, that's a typical process to go through municipality for plan approval. They have a set of guidance that says, hey, follow these rules and you will get approval. That is the land development plan process. We submitted those plans in May of 2024. Worked back and forth as is typical with the municipal staff and municipal engineer. There were a number of resubmissions to address review comments, again, very standard fare. Ultimately, there came a point, it was about, say, August into September of 2024, where there was continued conversation from the township engineer, who I believe was also functioning as the zoning officer at that point in time for Spring-Sperry, relative to parking. I won't get into the super bloody, gory details, but in short, it was a question around how the parking requirements were being calculated. Seth can speak into that later if there are any specific questions. I will kind of glaze over just in terms of the bigger picture. That resulted in roughly 6 to 7 months of conversation where the township ultimately denied a zoning application, and there was I'll refer to, I don't know if Ms. Say has anything to speak to about the parking agreement, which I think Dave Jones actually ultimately hammered out. That 6 or 7 months, while that was happening, the township was not reviewing the land development plans. We requested that happen. It is a typical process that we go through in many municipalities, that those things can and do very often run concurrently. So what that meant was, while there were some admittedly nominal technical comments by that point still to be addressed, no movement was happening on the review agency side for, again, 6 or 7, ultimately about 8 months. Fast forward to the development of that parking agreement, which I believe was finalized in April of 2025, so earlier this year. So that agreement did not result in any substantive change to the plans. So for all intents and purposes, there was 7, I would really call it 8 months of inactivity regarding review of the plans. There was nothing we could do. We requested that those things be reviewed. At that time, there was no point in losing time. That's not the path that the township took at that point. Okay, so that brings us to April. Then we re-engaged with the township. We had submitted plans way back in October of 2024. I think it was the 27th. The township then reviewed those plans, and we didn't receive a review on those plans until July, I'll say the 2nd or 3rd of 2025. So again, ultimately, I think that's about 9 months of time where those plans just sat at the township and nothing was happening with the review. We get that review in July. We again go forward. We revise the plans to address whatever remaining comments there were. Some technical, a lot of more administrative or interpretive comments. We get a recommendation, which we actually had from the Township Planning Commission, which is typically the step that takes you then to going to the board, whatever the governing board is for municipality, supervisors, commissioners, or borough council. I believe that was the September 25th board meeting, board of supervisors, and leading into that meeting, we had received a letter indicating staff's recommendation for a conditional approval, conditioned upon what we consider to be relatively nominal and addressable conditions. Meeting that evening doesn't go that way. Board chooses to go in a different direction, and I was not present at that meeting. It's my understanding from the team, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that there was actually really no opportunity for conversation from the design team, and that the board made it clear that they were looking to potentially deny the plan. And I believe Mr. Jones from Brooks' office was there and requested that the plans be tabled. We do not want the plans to be denied, of course. That puts you back to the beginning of the process. So we all step back at that point and say, what is going on? Why is there a problem here from the municipal side of things? Ultimately, what we were informed was questions around turning movements at the new school driveway connection to Sundale. To reiterate, that had been on the plans since March of 2024. It has not substantively changed. I would say it hasn't even nominally changed since that time. This is the first time that there was conversation raised with concerns about turning movements at that intersection. Further, I believe we had some conversation with the district operationally to say, are we going to have an occasion where we could have buses conflicting at that location, at that intersection? And the conversation then was, it's not likely to ever happen. Or if so, nominally, maybe once or twice a day. We then had that discussion with municipality, and that did not go any further. Their request was, well, you need to show us how this is going to work. When I say turning movements, this is, it's not an engineering term, but it's an engineering practice that says we have kind of templates for all of like different bus sizes, trucks, vehicles, all that kind of thing. You then run that through basically a model to say, can those vehicles pass without conflicting with each other or crossing over the road center line, adversely impacting, parking areas, et cetera. So we ran that. Ultimately, this is all conversation that we're trying to have after the September board meeting with First Capital Engineering, who is the municipal engineer, to resolve that comment indicating, okay, here we go. We could make this work. We would limit that movement to a left turn exiting the driveway onto Sundale. We provided turning movements that indicated that can work. That also resulted in a slight change to what we call the curb return, the radii for where that driveway connects to Sundale. Subsequently, I'm trying to then tie this into the October meeting and the reason for not going. So we received two pieces of correspondence. Seth may have these. I don't have them specifically. I think they're in our handout. Very close to the Board of Supervisors meeting. Those pieces of correspondence included additional language relative to the conditions that had previously been shared with the board. Again, there has not been a change to the plan relative to this issue from the onset of the project. So everybody's radar went up and said, why is this happening now? What is this focus on this one issue in this one area? That's a handful of buses, limited times per day. I'll speak to my perspective, and again, ask the gentleman to jump in here, but we had this conversation with the team and said, this doesn't feel right. This feels like we're walking into something in a Board of Supervisors meeting that's going to feel very similar to last month's. That's not going to be beneficial to anybody. That was a conversation that we said strategically, we think that this isn't going to be helpful. We've provided a fair amount of information, and we're not getting like the checkmark feedback saying, yep, that looks good, you provided what we've asked for, we think this is acceptable. And the fear, frankly, or fear or concern, I should say, is that conversation would go sideways in a public meeting, that there's going to be, basically blowing an issue up that doesn't need to be blown up. And the consensus was, maybe that's not the right approach. Let's step back. Let's take the time to maybe have some conversation between entities, whether that is school board members and the municipal, talk about what's behind the scenes here, because I've been doing this for 33 years. I've been doing schoolwork for most of those 33 years. This turning movement issue is not something that I have ever seen at a level that would prompt, we're not going to approve the plan. It's also disheartening to find that information released in September of 25 when the plans have not changed for the past 16 or 17 months. So again, this is a judgment call based on your professionals saying, here's what we're accustomed to seeing. This is how processes typically work. This does not feel right. This feels like we're walking into something that is not going to end favorably. Let's preclude that and see if we can have some conversation outside the meeting that could lead to something more productive moving forward. That was a lot. I'm going to press pause and look to my team members. I think, Seth, I don't know if you want to share that information at this point. I do want to talk a little more about the technical aspects of this turning question. There are some points I really think are critical for the board to be aware of before we move too far beyond that.
Yeah, to kind of put the period on what Mark was saying there, I think the recommendation that was in the cover letter issued on 10/15, I think it's on the back page, example 4. It's the Director of Community Development's recommendation. This is a report that gets handed to the Board of Supervisors. It provides a recommendation for approval of the plan based on conditions. On the 16th of October, the very next day, that conditional approval was significantly modified, and this is one of the main reasons we decided it was a recommendation to pull the submission. The caveat was added, and it says, a caveat to the recommendation of approval would be not to design an access drive that will not function properly for the site and the adjacent property owners for the township's ordinance requirements. That in there was probably the biggest red flag, that more conversations need to happen, that even if this went to the point of having a vote, I'm not sure how that would be approved, with a caveat that essentially says you have to change your design. I don't know how you do approval and then also say changing. So that was the major explanation part that we decided to provide the recommendation.
If I could, and not to get too engineerical about this issue, but I would like to speak to this most recently raised concern about turning movements in this location. So point 1, the specific section that's being referenced in the ordinance, actually that was presented to us, that section referenced by the engineer doesn't exist. We read the ordinance, we believe we understand it, it's probably just a typo, but the section we believe that's being referred to indicates this need for a setback. So, okay, you build a curb line and you have to have a setback of 3 feet from a property line. That particular section very clearly indicates that is not applicable when you're in a residential zoning district, where we are located. So on its surface, our contention continues to be this is not applicable to this project. This requirement does not govern. Let's, for example, or for sake of argument, say, okay, if we agree that that is the case, if there's no bending and the interpretation is, nope, you're stuck, you got to do it, we only have 6 inches from our curb line to a property line, there are ways to address that. You all may have heard sometime in the course of this project, there's a large storm sewer pipe that runs through this property, right? It's along the property line. There's an easement associated with that, which gives the municipality the right to come in and clean, maintain typical standard stuff. Where the driveway comes into the site, it comes across the corner of that easement. And there was conversation saying, no. You can't put your driveway over top of this easement. To provide context, I can think of maybe half of the plans that I've done in my career. We work over top of easements all the time. We've worked on top of easements for high pressure gas lines, where you're absolutely okay to pave over top of them. It's not desired to fill 20 feet over top of them, so it's harder for that owner to get to the utility underneath. But to put paving, especially a tiny little bit of paving and curb, has zero bearing on that easement. If the driveway were to be shifted slightly, I'll call it plan south, kind of down the page as you look at our drawings, it would encroach into that easement slightly. It would easily provide what we believe is the incorrect, but a 3-foot buffer on the other side of the road. Issue goes away as far as the geometry is concerned and that stuff. Township has, my understanding, indicated through conversations I believe with Solicitor Jones that that's not acceptable. They won't accept that driveway being over top of the easement. I cannot think of a reason why that would be prohibited. And again, you own the land underneath. I'm not the attorney. The easement sits over top. This does not preclude in any way, shape, or form the ability for the owner of that easement the municipality to access their storm sewer pipe and continue to provide maintenance. That's an easy answer. The alternative is you could push that driveway further up towards one of the other properties. I don't advocate for taking property or land. I most certainly do not. However, in this instance, there could be a tiny little bit of land, and the only reason that that land would be taken by the district is to meet an ordinance requirement that we think isn't correct, to provide a 3-foot buffer between the curb line and the property line. There is a solution here. The bigger point to me is, why are we talking about this 19 months after we presented a plan that hasn't changed, that shows this? There's been conversation about, well, the impacts to parallel parking along the edges of the road on Sundale. My suspicion, based on looking at the width of that road, is that it is probably currently not compliant with standards for proper lane width and then proper width for parking, at least on one side, maybe both. We took some time to look at aerial imagery historically just to see what is the pattern. Is this a regularly parked area? Granted, I don't drive it every day. The history that we looked at was it doesn't appear that there's very much, if any, happening in that area. Yes, a new driveway would impact the ability to parallel park on that side of Sundale. For sure, it would. It's been like that from the beginning. Period. Very long sentence. I believe that covers the history. I was hoping to kind of just lay as groundwork. We are not here to create any kind of adversarial situation with anybody. We're all frustrated with the fact that there is no reason this process should have taken anywhere near this. Typical land development plan, if I'm doing a project, 9 months, maybe a year, maybe. And that's for projects that have hair on and have real challenges. We don't have that on this site. Point blank, we do not. The traffic studies were done back, I think, summer of last year. We've been through all those, so everything's been done. The point that nothing has changed on this plan, essentially since the very first submission, tells me a lot. There's nothing going on with the plan and the design and the technical aspects of this project that should have us in the position that we're all sitting in today, not having an approval in hand. It's not a technical issue. It's not for lack of meeting ordinance requirements. Our perspective, maybe you've heard this couched, is the goalposts have moved a few times. We've received information late. Then there was another piece of information, and then another, and then another. Nothing has changed about this plan. There's my very impassioned history and kind of genesis of where we are. Seth, I don't know if you want to.
Mark, do you mind talking a little bit about typically what happens after the conditional approval at the land development stage and before it meets the board of supervisors? That typical process and how that's not what has kind of played out in this scenario.
Sure. So again, as you walk through the land development process, usually you go through a planning commission first, who is typically charged in a municipality with reviewing kind of the hardcore detailed, like, are you meeting the requirements of the municipal ordinance, the land development and subdivision ordinances, all the rules basically. Then the planning commission, once they are satisfied, will say, yep, we're going to recommend approval up to the next level to the board and say, hey, we think that this group has met their obligations. They may attach some conditions and say, yeah, you have to provide, usually it's administrative stuff. You got to provide a permit for PennDOT if you needed one. You need to get agreements signed. You need to maybe post financial security. Usually when it comes from the planning commission to the next level, most of that stuff has been vetted. That's where you dig in and you do the detailed work on any kind of plan revisions. Once it gets to a board, and usually when I see a recommendation, which we saw before a board meeting where the staff is saying, we're recommending an approval with these conditions, I would look at that and go, yeah, we're gonna probably walk in here and it's seemingly, we're gonna get an approval. We looked at the conditions that were attached coming into that September meeting and nothing in there gave us pause. We thought it was all very manageable stuff and we would tackle it. To Seth's point, what I would normally have expected is a board then would approve it conditionally saying you are approved, meaning you don't come back to the board of supervisors. They say, here you go, here's your list of conditions, address those conditions with the staff and the engineer. Once those are addressed, everybody's checked the boxes. We print out a bunch of plans, everybody signs them, we notarize them, we take them to the county, we record the plans, and the process is done. That is typical and standard fare. It's a little different for me to see, A, that a recommendation is not followed by the board. It happens, the board has the right certainly to do that. But even beyond it is, why are the conditions changing after the fact? There was no conversation with us. This didn't come out of a review that we were aware of. Why all of a sudden our conditions that were, I think Seth has this in the handout, they were like this before, then sometime for some reason after the meeting, which we were not really able to speak to, now the conditions are bigger. Why? What's going on? That is atypical. That is not something I have seen many times in my career.
All right, so I'll walk through the handout that was distributed to the board, just going example by example. So let's start at example 1. And Mr. Kurowski has already talked through many of the points. I'm not going to go into details on each, but you can see here are the comments from the 925 at the top, the Board of Supervisors summary, and then the 1023 Board of Supervisors summary. You can see in the blue highlighted and the yellow highlighted, these are comments that have been added. We have separated them out. The blue highlighted, that's actually the Saldo reference. As Mr. Kurowski had mentioned, it was incorrectly referenced as it was communicated to the design team, but we are assuming that it's actually referencing the portion of the Saldo that is spelled out there. Interestingly enough, the comment that was received by K&W leaves off the last part of the sentence, which then continues and says within 3 feet of a property line other than a street or intersection in a residential district. So it should be exempt. The fear with this comment is that what happened at the last Board of Supervisors meeting, if the design team shows up and is not able to speak to it, not able to explain this is an incorrect reference, then that is simply on the record and a potential reason for Board of Supervisors to misunderstand why it should not be accepted. The yellow highlighted areas are based on the bus turning movements. There was a solution for overlapping. There was actually a concern about buses turning right and going into the direction of traffic, crossing that line. The solution that K&W came with was actually doing the left turn only for buses in that area, which resolved the comment. Only after that were parallel parking spaces on both sides of Sundale brought up as the new standard of design. Example number 2, very similar comment, but it actually brings in the AASHTO standards for design. That may not raise a red flag for anybody else, but that actually then also speaks to sight lines. So this again is the introduction of parking, parallel parking on both sides of Sundale. Those AASHTO references means that certain parking would have to be restricted. This was talked about with the township and the township engineer, the township staff, and there was a discussion about restricting parking on either side of that Sundale entry. So the yellow there is really speaking towards that bus turning movement. That's the same as the last subject. The blue talks about some of the other pieces there related to that, the sight lines. The red is the part in this comment that is a little concerning. This is the first time the mention of a new traffic study was brought to the attention of the design team. That was a new comment as of October 16th, leading up to that supervisors meeting. Now remember, this project has already had 2 traffic studies, neither yielded any recommendations for modification to the design or the surrounding impacts of the neighborhood. So the introduction or the request of another traffic study did catch the design team off guard. It was new information to us. Remember, this is also a neighborhood that handles this bus load at a separate time. These are not concurrent with the middle school. So it was, again, a little bit of out of left field in our understandings. Example 3. This speaks to the easement. The easement has come up a couple times today. Through conversations with the township, it was understood that the township's concern in the easement is actually impacting development within the easement itself. So let's say a sidewalk or a piece of paving goes there, the township has to maintain that pipe happening underneath it is their responsibility per the legal agreement for the easement. If they disturb some of that paving, who's going to be responsible? This quote here, the section pasted in, is from the 821 response letter from K&W. It speaks to that agreement, that conversation that had been going on with the township, and it added notes to the drawings that the school district would take financial responsibility for any improvements within that sidewalk or inside that easement for sidewalks and other such items. It wasn't until 10/20 that Solicitor Jones received information from the township solicitor saying that they interpret any improvement inside that area as a structure, even though it's just paving or sidewalk, that it would be considered a structure, and that structures are not allowed within the easement. So that one ended up being dead in the water after months of collaboration. And then, as previously mentioned, the one that really kind of gave us some pause is that on the 15th of October, The Director of Community Development provided a recommendation that was immediately revised the very next day to include a caveat that required design changes to the drawings. It almost seems like a major red flag to say that you're going to change the drawings after we're asking for approval. We decided that needed further conversation. So these 4 examples are 4 examples of how comments have changed since the conditional approval. And we were asked to bring some examples of that so that the board can see when we talk about the goalpost moving, this is what's being experienced. With that, Dr. Grouser.
Okay, so I'm going to turn it back to you, Madam President, to see if you want to facilitate any questions or the board as a whole. I know we share a lot of information, that's why I thought we'd give a moment to pause and process from there.
Right, it is a lot of information. I'm wondering, I think the best plan might be to go around the table and ask questions, seek clarification, so the board can sort of understand what's going on. Mrs. San Martin, I'll start with you and we'll just come around the table. Does that work? Thank you.
Thank you for sharing all of that information. My question is, have you all been in contact with the township since the last meeting to facilitate some conversations? And if so, have they been positive or are they still kind of obscure?
So we've had conversation with the municipal engineer. I believe that the planning director, Mr. Hammond, I believe he's been in the correspondence, although this was really more conversation between us and the engineer. As Seth mentioned, when we provided that information, there was never we really haven't gotten feedback from the engineer saying, yes, we agree, or no, we don't, other than this interpretation of the ordinance section on the setback, which we don't think is correct. They have just reiterated what they've said previously, and then they expanded on their comment. So I guess if I would characterize it as, I wouldn't see that as a positive response to us. It's almost a no response and additional information that I'm not sure where it came from.
There has been a request for a meeting.
Yes, and I will say this too, like, we have been in regular contact throughout this entire process. Again, for us, it's typically through the engineer. That's who we are usually working with. And a lot of times through planning, through municipal staff to say, hey, we just want to make sure we're appropriate. We had, I believe our staff had requested either a virtual call or a phone call or a meeting with the engineer. And to my knowledge, we have not received a response.
Does that work?
Thank you.
Dr. Hessen, is there, I know it's a ton of information, I feel you.
Yeah, still processing. Made a lot of notes. So you said it's not a technical issue with the plan, right?
That is our perspective, yes.
Maybe you can't, but can you speculate why the township is trying to delay this? If you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's fine.
I mean, I can offer perspective.
Sure.
Certainly, we nobody has said anything to us directly, nor would I generally speculate. But when I'm in a situation where it's taken 19 months to get through a land development plan, there is something going on far beyond the requirements of the ordinance and the technical aspects of a project. Whatever those may be, if there are conversations, again, be they political, be they whatever they are, that's out of our purview. It is just abnormally long. I've got projects far more complicated, that have been approved faster. And I would note too to that point, because I did mention it before, and this was very unusual for us, at the very beginning of this project, I'm sorry, this is a little technical, but I'll try and keep it simple. There are rules when you submit a land development plan. There's a set of rules called the municipal planning code that says, here's the duration of the process. And if you exceed that, or if it's, hey, we're still moving, you as the applicant can grant an extension to the municipality, say, okay, it looks like you need more time to review. Before we maybe even had our first review, maybe it was after the first one, we received correspondence from the township saying, here, we would like you to extend the time frame to a date undetermined. Basically saying, we're just going to leave this wide open and take as much time as we'd like to review your plans. I don't think in my entire career I've had that request.
So we didn't ask for it, the
Correct.
township said
That is correct.
you should do this.
Yes. That is unusual. I'm used to, usually it's a 90-day period, and sometimes it's, hey, we need to review for another 90 days for whatever reason. And generally, it's a conversation. We say, okay, we get it. We're trying to do this. It's not open-ended. The whole point of that process is to provide a framework that's a reasonable time frame to get through and meet the rules. If you're going beyond that, there's a bigger problem, and that's, I think, what we're seeing here.
Right, and then Mr. Wentz, your example 3 says 10/20, you received communication from the township solicitor. When I look at the website, Mr. Sanders, you're listed as a solicitor. Have you stepped back from your role in this whole situation? Is it someone from your office or is it you?
Madam President, are we allowing cross-examination and asking of other board members? I just want to clarify from your statements.
I would say that's not cross-examination, if you'd like to answer.
Sure, I'm happy to.
Sure.
I have had no involvement other than being asked one question prior to land development submission in this project at all.
Okay. Okay. Steve?
I have quite a few questions.
That's why we're here.
Okay. So could you please list all of the elements of the building or land development plan that require approval from any element of Springersbury Township that have not been approved?
You want to cover land development? I'll have those.
Right, so obviously we've got land development plans. That's predominantly what we're talking about this evening. Those, have a conditional approval from the planning commission. They have not been acted upon by the board of supervisors. There is no zoning in this case. Recall that we went through zoning relative to parking, that went a different direction, and a zoning agreement was reached around parking or parking agreement around zoning. Those are the only two relative to site. Separately, there was an old permit that has been secured, which was the MPDS permit, which is the County Conservation District. That is in hand. Those are the site-related items.
As far as the building-related items, there is a building permit application that was submitted on August 26th. That is the correct date, and received and confirmed by the township it was received. To date, we have not received permit comments back. I was informed by the township that the permit was delayed in distributing it to their third-party code reviewer until after the 30-day period that was typical for the permit comments to be received. Right now, that permit submission is about 62 days aged. Not about, it is exactly 62 days aged. In addition to the building permit, there will be continued building inspections throughout the construction process that will rely on the township. They are scheduled through the township and administered by the township and are required per the permit. So this relationship with the township will continue through construction via the inspection process.
So there are still rakes left in the yard for us to step on, potentially.
That's correct.
All right. So March 2024, the initial site plan goes in. When did, I know there were traffic studies, when did discussions about traffic on Sundale Road begin in earnest, substantively?
I'll jump into that first and hand it over to Mark. I do have the dates of the two traffic studies. They are dated July of 2024 and September of 2024. The second traffic study was requested by the township. Basically, they claimed that it was done, the first one was done while school was not in session, therefore you needed it when school was in session. Unfortunately for the school district paying for a second one, the engineer had already taken that into account in their estimations, and the second traffic report basically confirmed their estimations were correct. There were no recommendations coming out of those traffic studies that majorly impacted the site or created major improvements for the neighborhoods. And as far as conversation as to traffic on Sundale, I believe that was always part of the conversation since the first submission included that connection. Mark, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
The only thing I would add is I don't recall any conversation specific to concerns with turning movements and or concerns, I don't believe, with the parallel parking on Sundale until September of this year.
So discussions about traffic patterns as they relate to Sundale Road for at least a year.
Yes.
At least a year.
Yes.
When was KW informed that the requirement would be parallel parking on both sides with bidirectional traffic in between? I think that your note said the 14th of October of this year.
I just want to make sure you're indicating, requirement being that's what exists currently. Nothing we were going to do was changing that other than the connection of our driveway, which would say, hey, wherever there's parallel parking in that area, obviously that can no longer happen because of the new driveway. I'm not sure if that's answering the question, but it wasn't a design criteria for us. It is an existing condition.
Yeah, and I'm not an attorney. I'm a layman in this regard, and so I didn't know whether to call it a review standard or requirement or whatever else. But it was communicated to you for the first time that the requirement was parallel parking on both sides with bidirectional bus traffic in between about a week and a half ago.
Yeah, and I'll just clarify on that. I mentioned in my previous report, there were two meetings with the township. One was on 9/25 and the other one was on 10/7. It was first brought up at that 9/25 meeting that that was going to be a requirement. It was further elaborated with the sight lines then on the 10/7. So it was kind of a two-step process. They said, consider the turning rate, consider the bus turning movements with parallel parking on both sides. The KW team came back with a solution, which was a left turn only out of that access road, which resolved the turns in oncoming traffic. As soon as that was resolved, then the additional comment about sight lines and everything else that came along with that was brought up in conversation. Now, during that conversation, it was discussed that sight lines can be resolved by limiting parking on at least the west side of Sundale there to allow for the sight lines for any vehicles coming out. We were basically encouraged to go that route. It was actually included in KW's drawings that were submitted the very next day on the 10th. They made provisions to include the no parking signs. What was not explained to us at that point, and unfortunately, Attorney Jones was unable to make that 10/7 meeting. Unfortunately, what was left out of the conversation is that any restrictions on parking, while the Board of Supervisors has the authority to do that, which is what was expressed in the meeting, the process of going through that approval process is a long process that requires public meetings, public notice, public I believe hearings, or whatever else may be entitled in that process. And the inclusion of that the inclusion of the parking restriction likely made it unapprovable by the Board of Supervisors. So that was unbeknownst to us at the 10/7 meeting, and we discovered only after talking to the attorney.
In the absence of a requirement or standard or whatever other term I would be using here, in the absence of the communication of that sort of design requirement by the township, what is the standard that you would normally use? What would you normally assume in terms of the parallel parking, bidirectional traffic for a residential street of that size?
So again, what we look at is the geometry first that says we have a road that's connecting to an existing municipal street. We need to make sure that the curb returns, all those things are appropriate. We don't speak to the parallel parking component because we're proposing any of that work. Municipally, there would typically be, I believe I'm not an attorney, but I believe there's typically an ordinance or a resolution that's passed by a municipality that says we're going to change the signage here for parking. I believe there is some sort of a public, timeframe for that. I don't think it's a very unusual process, but it's not one that we would typically initiate. That is the municipality reacting and saying, okay, your plan says this. It means that a few of our parking spaces would need to be eliminated now more because of the site distance conversation, which would then prompt whatever action is required by the municipality to do so legally through an ordinance or resolution, however they address that.
Final question. I also have questions for council, but I'll wait for round two. So the middle school is also on Sundale. Is there anything different about that particular stretch of tarmac in front of the middle school as opposed to the back end of the proposed intermediate school? I mean, has the township requested a reevaluation of bus traffic entering and leaving the middle school? And could they? Because what I'm trying to figure out is whether the township's playing Calvin ball with us. And I'm asking that question not just for myself, but for anybody who might have any kind of land use concern in this township going forward for any reason. So, has the administration heard from anybody about you move a mailbox to middle school and now you have to have 800 parking spaces and room to do wheelies with a school bus?
We have not, but given this process, we're certainly evaluating all the things that if we need to do those modifications, what would that mean moving forward?
All right, thank you. That's it for now.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. I have a really simple question because I look at this stuff and my eyes glaze over. But there was one section and one comment. I just want to make sure I got this straight because I'm not from around here. I'm from a small town up north nobody ever heard of. But up there, when we define structures, we think of the Empire State Building as a structure, the Freedom Tower as a structure. A sidewalk is a sidewalk. Do I understand this correctly, that now it's being considered a structure, a sidewalk?
Yeah, as it was explained to the design team, the zoning ordinance doesn't actually define structures. So it's left up to interpretation at that point. And the interpretation came back when 1020 is conveyed to Mr. Jones that a sidewalk, in their opinion, is a structure. And that's the stance they took.
And we currently have a paved walkway there.
Yeah, it is worth noting, there is currently about 220 feet linear and about 660 square feet of paved sidewalk in that easement currently. The proposed design reduces it to somewhere in the mid-100s, about 50% of the length, and exactly 50% of the area of encroachment. So the proposed design actually improves the current sidewalk overlap into the easement.
Thank you very much.
I actually wanted to clarify that as well, and I'll just ask you to repeat. They don't want us to have macadam driveway asphalt over the easement. But now if you and I walked over there and you pointed out to me where the easement is, there's currently cement sidewalk over it?
Over 220 feet of it linear and over 660 square feet area.
And is it my layman inexperience here what the difference between a sidewalk and a macadam asphalt driveway? Is there a difference that I'm missing, Mr. Engineer?
Not from my perspective, Board Chair. When we typically see, again, I'm not an attorney, but what I have historically seen when a reference to a structure, which is you keep certain items out of the building setback line, usually that is something vertical. That may be a retaining wall. That may be something that is actually of some elevation. It is, sometimes that we see parking can be prohibited in a setback. This is an easement. And usually to me, the guiding principle is, does it, make it unreasonable for the owner of that easement to access their facility that lies underneath? And to be honest, when I referenced before, when we've had like a big natural gas pipeline, usually what the easement provider would say is, it's okay, but if they have to come in to rip up the pipe to do maintenance work and they rip up the curb and sidewalk and district-owned property, it may be on your dime to repair that back to its permanent condition.
But we've agreed, excuse me for interrupting you, but we've agreed to that already, am I understanding? So if you have to come in and service this pipe and rip up our macadam driveway, it's okay, we're good, we'll fix it.
Amen, yes. That is standard practice in my mind. Again, this, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm getting at my depth a little bit, but my experience in this area is we've not seen pavement interpreted as a sidewalk or something that would counter the ability to have that in a utility.
Attorney Jones agrees with that comment.
Okay, all right. I'm starting to get complex here about all the, I don't know, I guess that's, I don't know. All right, moving on. Mr. Sanders, have you questions?
Oh, I guess I do. Thanks for your sharing of your opinions on this land development process. I just want to clarify, you bounce back and forth between conditional approval. I just want to clarify, you bounce back and forth between conditional approval and recommendation for conditional approval. You've used both terms.
Sure.
Who gives conditional approval?
So,
What governing body?
So the Planning Commission would make a recommendation to a governing board saying, we recommend a conditional approval with these conditions. The governing body, in this case, the Board of Supervisors, would establish those conditions. It is to their discretion to do so. So it is that board.
Okay, that's important because there's been several communications that have been put forth to the public and to this board that conditional approval has been given and then taken away. And that's just not straightforward to the community. It's a recommendation. The Planning Commission is purely, it's not an elected body. It's an appointed body.
Absolutely.
Okay. So you had mentioned that, and in the MPC, it's a 90-day review period, and that's the normal is 90 days. And that you don't recall seeing a lot of townships that give or ask for waivers, time waiver extensions. I just want to clarify what you were saying there.
What I don't see is a request for an open-ended, no time defined extension. Usually it's got a time to it, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Whatever seems appropriate to resolve the outstanding items.
So if I were to look at Spring Garden Township right now and I don't see a time, I'm looking at their waiver, I don't see a time listing on there. Is that abnormal too?
I can't speak to Spring Garden or that particular
Well,
project.
I don't see it on there, so I'm just curious. Now I've got two townships here.
I'm not sure what you're asking, sir. You're
I
saying
just want
that
to
the other
clarify. I want to clarify
municipalities-
the time frame for approval. I know what the code says. It's
Sure.
90 days, but you're saying that's the norm is 90 days for approval, or
My experience with land development plans, particularly for school projects, many of them more complex than this project, 8, 9, 12 months, maybe at most.
how many projects have you done in Spring and Sperry Township?
I couldn't list them today, sir. I don't have that information in front of me.
Is it more than 10? Less
No.
than 10?
It's less than 10.
Okay. So you don't have a lot of experience over, how many years of experience do you have?
33 years in business.
So over 33 years, you've done less than 10 projects in Spring and Sperry Township.
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall how long it took to approve those projects in Spring and Sperry Township?
No.
Okay. So your opinion is on your on your approval process for school projects, not Spring and Sperry Township approved school projects, correct?
It is the general observation, regardless of the municipality, what the process typically looks like in my experience. Are there some that go longer? Sure. Are there some that go shorter? Absolutely.
Perfect. I just want to clarify now.
Sure.
If one municipality takes a year and another one takes 3 years, is the one that takes 3 years supposed to take a year? I want to clarify here because doesn't each municipality have their own set of saldo or ordinances to approve land
And
development?
they're also bound to the MPC,
Correct.
which requires timeframes.
Correct.
I can't state, if you want to give me specific facts and considerations as to what took a project 3 years, I'll happily comment on it. I can't speculate why a project would last 3 years. If they have a traffic problem, if they can't come to terms on utility service, those aren't land development related items typically.
That's fair. I just want to clarify what
Sure.
you were saying. So each project's unique then, is that what you're saying?
Absolutely it is.
Okay, so each one has its own time frame of approval, depending upon what the conditions are.
With the overlying structure being the municipality or the municipal planning code, which dictates
Fair, that's fair.
typically.
Absolutely fair. I completely agree with you on the MPC and what the saldo is for the individual municipalities. So you made the comment that the first time you heard about the turning radius and the ingress and egress was, what was that date?
I believe it was after the September meeting. Expressed as a concern and a problem.
Okay, so there was no ingress, egress comment or concern or issue on any of the engineer letters from, I think the first letter was issued back in May of 2024, correct?
That's probably right. Our first submission was in May of that year. There had been, I think Seth mentioned, there had been general conversation around traffic on Sundale. Yes.
Okay. So you had been talking about it since the original plan submission. Now, when you get comment letters back from the engineer, if a comment is satisfied, what does the engineer do? In this case, Spring Township Extension.
It depends. Usually, either it's removed from the letter,
right,
or they will strike through the text to indicate that it has been addressed. One of those two items, typically.
Okay. So the ingress-egress issue stayed on those letters consistently.
In some form.
And in some form throughout the process. But you're saying, and I just want to confirm, you're saying that the plan did not change from submission to today?
Nominally changed.
Nominally changed, but that comment stayed the same?
There was absolutely conversation around that, and at no point was there conversation. It's my recollection that the language in that comment didn't necessarily change. We would reply, then there would be discussion, likely with Mr. Luciani with First Capital or his team, to try to understand why is the comment still showing up? It hasn't changed. We've provided information to this item. Why is it still here? Don't recall that we ever really got an answer. We continued to ask, but there was no feedback. There was no change to the comment. There was no clarification. There was no, here's what we're really concerned about. Nothing has happened that would, in terms of a revision to the plan, that would prompt that information to show up on 9/25 of 25.
Well, that's interesting, because if the comment's been there the whole time, and you're saying he was not responsive, well, how did the comment change over time? I guess I'm trying to understand how the communication unfolded, because correct me if I'm wrong, as you answer a question, isn't it in land development, because they're all kind of unique, that if the issue's not addressed, it's kind of like whack-a-mole. If you push down on one side, another issue may arise, right? Does that happen in your experience?
It can, sure.
Okay. So
usually
could that have possibly happened here?
Sure, and if that was the case, I would have expected there to be different language in a letter that says, hey, you provided this. What we really were curious about was this, and we didn't get it. And I can tell you that my staff has been unbelievably frustrated at the lack of clarification, responsiveness, and information coming from the township, so we know which whack-a-mole we're trying to hit.
That's
and
fair.
It has not been for lack of communication, requests. Our team has jumped every time there's been a request. Just look at what's happened since the 9/25 meeting. We have done nothing but be prompt, responsive, ask questions, seek feedback, seek clarification, and it's not coming.
Okay, so he's not responding to you. Is that what you're saying? That's your comment
Among
here?
all those things, there has been response. What there hasn't been is clarification as to why is the same comment continuing to show up when we provided information and you, as the reviewer, have not told us what you think, yes or no, good or bad, yes we agree, no we don't.
Okay.
I can't ask that question many more times and not get an answer.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just want to understand
Sure.
what Mr. Luciani is responding. So it sounds like he's saying the same thing back to you over and over again?
It's just a comment that continues to remain, and when we ask the question, nothing changes. We don't get a response, the comment shows up. I can't keep guessing what it is that is desired from the township. We have requested that information, and it has not been provided.
So he's not providing you the information?
Correct.
Okay, he's giving you the same response to your question no matter how you answer it.
There are a few comments, I believe, that
So-
would
oh, so there are
be characterized that way, yes.
Oh, okay, so but those comments weren't helpful?
Simply, no.
No, okay.
There was not clear direction or clarification when same was requested.
Okay. We're going to have time to ask Dr. Krauser questions and others, or is my time done here? I just want to clarify from your opening statement about board decorum, or Madam President.
At this point, we're directing our questions to these professional advisors, I believe.
Last question. So I see three different firms up here, and I asked this last meeting. Who is the point person for the district's project? In other words, who do we talk to? Not to lay blame, as others have alleged in here, but who is the point person? Because Mr. Wentz has been here consistently since day one. I forget your last name from Fidavia, but you've started to show up. Who is the point person for this project amongst our professional engineer team here?
Crabtree Rohrball is the point person responsible for providing reports to the board. It doesn't mean, as we discussed last time, that other members can't show up and provide reports. Now, typically in the civil scope of services, we don't have monthly meetings, bi-monthly meetings in their scope of services for the pure sake that it's not required typically, and it's not an expense that the school district needs to take on. So typically, I would be the point person, along with our partners at Fidavia, showing up and providing reports from their perspective as well. Because of the conversations in the last meeting, we felt it was prudent to have the entire team represented here with Fidavia on multiple levels, as well as K&W, answer questions directly.
I'm still unclear on who we're asking questions of, because I'm not an engineer. And when I've asked Mr. Wentz questions in past meetings, he says, well, that's a K&W question. So is there a reason why there's not somebody that's leading the effort here with the school district? In other words,
Our role.
help the board understand who
Sure.
the point person is.
Yeah, kind of structure for sure.
Yes, thank you.
So typically our role on a project like this is we're very front-facing with the municipality, with local government, with regulatory agencies. We are usually the ones presenting a lot of times in tandem with Seth or the architectural firm to say, hey, if there's questions about the building, they will handle those. But we really lead the charge on municipal meetings and all of kind of the regulatory agency correspondence. I attend board meetings or committee meetings usually when requested. If there is a specific question or, hey, you would like an update. With all of our school district clients, there's some that I go. To be honest, I don't go nearly as much as we used to because we just aren't asked to be there, but we've never been opposed. But I would say that, this is our role as the design team. I coordinate back with Seth, so we make sure we're on the same team. We're coordinating with the whole design team. We're certainly coordinating with district administration, so everybody's on the same page as to what's happening, where are we, what's next. To your point about the school board meetings, I will happily come here and answer questions. Clearly, I just don't know that there was a request, and we weren't asked to be here.
No, that's a fair point. So nobody's in charge here. It's kind of
I don't think anybody said nobody's in charge. I think what we said was Mr. Wentz, as the architect, generally leads the discussion with the board. We lead the discussion with regulatory agencies, outside folks, municipal government. We coordinate as needed to share information with the board, and if there's a desire to have us come to a board meeting to talk about site civil things, we will attend. I don't think there was anything in there that said nobody's in charge.
okay.
It's
So
very
who
clear
do you take? So when the three of you get together and you have a question about the school project, who makes that determination, or where do you go to get approval?
It could be any number of folks. If it's a legal question, we ask the district, would you like us to engage with your legal counsel? Because we're not going to go talk to them and incur costs without making sure that that's appropriate. If there's some issue that relates to construction, I'm going to reach out to the Fidavia team and say, hey, let's talk through this. If there's an issue with the mechanical or electrical or plumbing designers or the structural folks, that goes through Seth because he manages those folks. They're part of his contract as well. Depending on the question, we know who to go and ask. If there is conversation with the district, with administration, again, we've had relatively regular meetings. We bring those up. If there's a special occurrence, we say, hey, we should chat about this. Here's something that was maybe not part of an agenda that we discussed previously. Let's make sure that we're communicating.
Okay, so they're meeting with you regularly, Dr. Krauser. So just so as this plan moves forward in whatever form it is, am I asking you, Dr. Krauser, for an update if there's something that shows up that's not quite right, or if the plan is approved, denied, whatever? Are you the person that I should route my questions to, or is it Mr. Wentz? Or because I've never seen you before,
Sure.
and I am the township solicitor except for this project. So I would have assumed I would have seen you at one of the meetings at some point, but again, I only attend regular meetings at Spring and Spring Township. So that's why I'm just curious. First time seeing you, new face. Just curious, who am I asking questions of if I have questions? Where do I route them to?
Well, if you have questions ahead of time, that'd be fantastic. Then I can prepare the team to assist those questions specifically. In a meeting, if a question comes up, and I'm not an engineer, not an architect, not a construction management firm, I can't answer that directly. So the better I get the questions ahead of time, the more I can coordinate with the team. And I think what we're emphasizing is, as you know, it's a complex process that involves lots of positions across it. So the more advanced notice I have with questions, the better I prepare to ensure that you get the answer you seek.
Fantastic, because there's a history of not answering my questions when I presented them via email. So that's why I feel the need to ask them in public meetings. And that's not you denying them, that's the president of the board that has denied them in the past. So I want to make sure that I'm asking the questions of the right people at the right time. Okay, I'm good. Thank you very much for the overview.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mrs. Broderick. Well, I asked this one question for your opinion. Not only as a school board member, but I'm a school board member who happens to live in Springersbury Township. I'm not a real happy chicken with what I'm hearing about this township, but that's for another discussion at another time. My question to you, and I don't know which one of you wants to tackle this, what do you feel are the odds that we'll ever get this project fully approved by this township, based on your experience and specific experience with Wilkes-Barre?
Yeah, it really comes down to those three subjects. There's the easement, the turning onto Sundale, and the modified recommendation. So, if we can get with the engineer, I feel like we are very close to solidifying what the resolution to the Sundale turning movements. It was mentioned that after all the other questions were resolved, a new set of questions, parallel parking on both sides came up. As long as we can get to the end of that and find out what the ultimate goal is, then that can be resolved. As far as the easement, I'm hoping that cooler heads prevail. I'm hoping that just because the zoning ordinance doesn't define what a structure is, we're able to have conversations. We did share with them the actual square footages and linear encroachment of the existing sidewalk, and proving that we were reducing it by 50%. I feel like, again, cooler heads can prevail. We can have a conversation on those two fronts. As far as the modified recommendation, if we are able to resolve those other two, then that should self-resolve. The comment in the modified recommendation was to not design a road that doesn't work for the zoning ordinance. If we're able to resolve those last two, then I don't see how that would still be applicable. So again, as long as cooler heads can prevail, as long as we can have a conversation about these items and keep the goalpost in one location, I believe we should be able to have resolution.
Because as they say, tempest is fugitive. There's a lot of things hanging in the balance, not the least of which is the need to get this project up and going with a shovel on the ground. I will look forward to hearing how things go with the township, because I think that they're part of the solution. I'll give them credit for that. Thank you. Mrs. Turner?
I just want to clarify a few things. I love a good timeline, so I want to make sure I have everything kind of right. Because we had talked about the sketch plan hasn't changed much since March of '24, but it was submitted in May, correct? Okay. So it was submitted in May, and during the township meeting in May, the township engineer was letting the board know it came in, but it wasn't, in his opinion, complete. And there was a lot of discussion around whether or not the clock had started on the project. It was a few minutes talking with, and they did consult with their solicitor at the time, Mr. Sanders, about the legality of that. That was hinged on the traffic study, correct? That had been submitted at the same time?
I believe there was a question as to should the study have been submitted with the overall package to actually start the clock running per the NPC guide.
And we submitted the first one in June.
I believe that is. I think it may have been July. It was June or July.
And the second?
September.
Okay. Yeah, after school started. So then we got communication from the township engineer, also the zoning officer at the time, about parking issues in around August, September. And then in October at their township meeting, the engineer reported to their supervisors that they had gotten some documentation that he would be reviewing that with Mr. Sanders and Randall, who I think is the township manager. What documentation would that have been that they got in October?
I suspect it was a land development plan resubmission to address review comments.
Okay.
And it could have included that second kind of a supplement to the original traffic study.
Okay. So then not much until we approved an agreement with the township in April of this year, 25. So that was really that long period of time. And at this point, are there any meetings on the book for you all to meet with them and with our solicitor?
No.
I would really, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I would really enjoy an executive session with Solicitor Jones to discuss this further, because I feel like I have a lot of legal questions that Attorney Say is probably going to say we need to go into executive session for. So I just want to kind of put that out there. I would feel a lot more comfortable all around with more of that type of information discussed. That's all. Thank you so much for all that information, very helpful.
So we've been around the table once. Did someone else's question prompt another question in anyone's mind? This is an opportunity. We have all of these professionals in front of us, so Dr. Hesson, go for it.
So this was something Mr. Sanders had said. So the planning commission is appointed and the board of supervisors is elected, but do they usually agree? Like in your 33 years of experience, does the board of supervisors usually follow what the planning commission recommends?
More often than not. It's not earth-shattering. It is unusual for sure, in my experience. We see some boards maybe more engaged than in other municipalities, but for the most part, we typically see a recommendation comes from planning commission, and it may be slightly adjusted. There might be some conversation. Hey, let's talk a little bit more. And we have plenty of other boards that say, planning commission approved this, we've discussed it, we're fine, you have a commission approval based on that recommendation. Because again, at that point, you have had the municipal professionals, including their engineer, done review likely multiple times. So most of the plan has been vetted quite hard by the time it gets to them.
Is it all right for me to start directing questions to the council?
Well, let me just.
I'm happy to do my best to answer them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. No development within the easement was characterized as the township's position here. No development within the easement. What are the implications of no development within the easement as it relates to this project?
So all that I'm going to say here is in consultation with the primary contact of this, which is St. Joe. Sorry, I'll eat it even further. All of my conversations here today are going to be the result of consulting with Attorney Jones, who's been the primary contact in this matter. And he's happy to follow up with an exec session. So if the district has to show the full turning motion for 2 buses to leave and enter on Sunday at the same time, and you require the radius, then a portion of the driveway has to be in the stormwater easement, right? And if it's not permitted as proposed, then essentially, according to your team, you're going to have to redesign. Now, as to what is in that easement and what's permissible, the easement indicates that you as a grantor agree will not construct or maintain any building or other structure upon said easement. I said earlier today that Attorney Jones mirrored the opinion of your team that there is already a sidewalk and a paved walkway there, and that apparently has not been deemed a building or other structure. And that he also agrees that there would not be much of a distinction between that and what is perhaps proposed by the district. So it's a question for the design team what happens if it's not permissible, but essentially there will be a requirement to redesign if we cannot access off of Sunday.
So the portions of the site that are specifically referred to by the easement in this case are the 200 and some odd linear feet.
Yes, on the eastern property line between Erlin and Sundance.
Okay. And there are easement agreements that are specific to easements that are specific to circumstances, right? This water, the sewer line running, or water evac line running under the property.
Yes.
Do we have any other properties in Springersbury that have easements?
That I don't know the answer to. I have a copy of this one, but I don't know the answer to that.
I would really be interested to know whether we are, I don't know how to put it diplomatically as possible. What other elements of other buildings in Springersbury might be subject to somebody telling us at some point that there's no development within the easement?
Understood.
Okay. And just to put a point on something, nobody is stopped by a conditional approval, right? Some unit of the township government can grant a conditional approval to something. It doesn't limit legally the ability of the township board of supervisors to make whatever decision they want to make on that.
So just to clarify, so the township issues a conditional approval. That's a designation that all the ordinances have been met and the district meets the essential enumerated conditions without the need to go back in front of the board of supervisors. They're typically administrative conditions, and that would include, some examples I have here: posting bonds, signed and notarized plans, development, stormwater agreements, receipt of outside approvals. But technically, a building permit will not be issued until the plan is approved and recorded.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Sullivan, I'm not certain she answered your question. So, who, again, attorneys say gives a conditional, you said the township, let's be specific on who gives conditional approval within the township.
There's a recommendation from the planning commission, and the board of supervisors provides the conditional approval. That was what was mentioned earlier by your group.
Right, but you just said the township, so I just want to clarify.
To be very clear, the board of supervisors is the township. That's the legal entity.
Thank you. I don't want any confusion, because there's been communication via email amongst board members saying they received conditional approval and then it got pulled back. So, Dr. Hessen, is that clear with the conditional approval? Because it was your email that was making that comment. So, let me ask you this. When the land development comes through, attorneys say.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I would like to continue with my process of coming around the table.
Oh, I didn't hear you say Ms. San Martin, then Dr. Hessen, and then Dr. Sullivan.
Sure.
They just started.
No, that's what I did.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. I appreciate you reminding me of the process.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. Mr. Robinson, have you anything further?
Have any of you guys ever seen the movie Bang the Drum Slowly? I would recommend it, but there's a scene there where baseball players are hustling fans in a card game, and it's called Tegwar, which stands for the exciting game without any rules. So they can fleece pigeons. This whole process reminds me of that whole game, Tegwar. Since you haven't seen the film, you don't know the reference, I'll stop right there. But thank you. Thanks very much. But watch the movie.
I just wanted to clarify your example 4. I don't believe until this is September, October, the Director of Community Development has an opinion and a recommendation. And I personally am not clear on who this person is and why, who are you to have it? I don't know, it was a new name, new identity. Could you help me out to understand that?
Sure, that excerpt is actually from the letter prepared by the Director of Community Development. I believe that's Randall Heilman. And he prepares a letter, the engineer provides comments to the township then prepares a letter that summarizes those comments and condenses them for the Board of Supervisors review, and at the end of it are these comments, again, in example 4, there's the 925 and the 1015, it's a recommendation from the Community Development, Director of Community Development. Those two did not change. It was only the very next day that we received a revision to that board summary, the 1016 that added the caveat. So that would be a letter prepared by Randall Hunt.
And is that the norm? Were we
Yes.
like surprised by any of that, or?
Yes. What the norm being, it is not uncommon for a person in that role to kind of consolidate the information when it goes from the planning commission review now coming forward to a governing board for action. They might be the one to kind of just consolidate the documents and say, okay, we've got an engineer's review, we've got all these things that we're lifting up to the board. I can't speak as to whether or not, like, his note there indicates supporting, I believe, the conditional approval. We see that on occasion for sure. I think it is well within their purview. It really kind of depends on how each municipal government functions, how they entrust their staff. So I would say it's not atypical to see, bundled up by a director of planning, or maybe it's the zoning director sometimes. They package it, they deliver it up and say, planning commission's done, here's the conditions, staff recommends approval. Or not, sometimes they don't recommend approval.
Okay.
That doesn't happen.
Good, okay, thank you. Mr. Sanders?
Thank you, Madam President. So Dr. Sullivan's asked a few times about other easements and what triggers the review. When a land development is submitted, and this is for you gentlemen as well, and attorneys say, what ordinance are they subject to upon submission? What version of the ordinance?
Usually it's the subdivision and land development ordinance.
Like what date? I mean, do they get to pick
Whatever the
date?
most recently approved by that entity, if there's amendments for some reason, those would be incorporated.
Whatever's in effect at the time of submission legally is what is applied.
Sure.
So if there were easements put in place, say for example, in 1950 something, which I think is when this particular stormwater easement was negotiated and done between the school district and the township, if there's land development done.
1972.
72. Before I was on this plan, 50 plus years ago. The ordinance that applied back then does not necessarily apply today if a land development submission comes through. Is that correct?
I'm not an attorney. If you're saying whatever the most recently accepted, adopted, published land development ordinance is in place, yes, it's my understanding that that would govern.
You agree, Attorney Sack?
I'm not a municipal attorney, I'm not Attorney Jones, but it makes sense to me.
All right. Dr. Krauser, I just have a few clarification questions for you. The letter that went out to the district, did you write that on your own, or did anybody else review it? Did these guys review it, or the attorney, or was that your own?
We used a team, certainly as we penned it, we confirmed information, and again, referencing a group of experts, and their process helps to ensure that there's accuracy in that work, yeah.
Okay, so who's on that team?
Everybody
That reviewed that particular letter. Went out to the community.
Correct. We had our solicitor, our construction management team, our engineering team, and our architectural team.
Okay. And the solicitor being, was that you, Attorney Say, or was that Attorney Jones that looked at that?
That was Attorney Jones.
Okay. Okay. The other point of clarification, you sent a communication to the board saying that you've received feedback recently from the township solicitor related to this plan. Who is the township solicitor related to this plan?
The Attorney Jones received information from the duly appointed new, I believe it's a litigation attorney, that they had, Attorney Summers had reached out to Attorney Jones.
Okay. And have you received any communication from me as the township solicitor related to this plan?
I have not.
Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. That's all I got. Thank you.
Mrs. Turner?
Prior to, because I know nothing has really changed since the plan was submitted, but prior to that, during the design process, Mr. Wentz, was there ever a time that we didn't have a separate entrance drop-off for the buses? Was there ever a time that it was somewhere else?
There was a very early plan that was used during the study process. It actually had two entrances coming in off of Erlin. And again, this was during the study before civil engineering had actually begun in earnest. There are actually two entrances coming off of Erlin. There was a separate parent drop-off loop and a separate bus drop-off loop. And we did actually still have an extension of a maintenance road, I believe, going out there, just to service the back of the building to some extent. I believe through conversations with the board, it was brought up it would be great to separate the bus and the parent traffic entirely onto two separate roads, alleviating traffic congestion on Erlin. And as we pulled the civil engineers into the design, that was the path we took forward.
Okay, so it's not out of the realm of possibility though, that could still be an option.
It would require a complete redesign of the site if we were using all traffic off of Erlin.
Okay, so, yeah, 'cause, like where the building is, would we have to move where the building is or just pretty much everything that's around it?
There were a lot of options that were explored at the very beginning when K&W got involved. And I actually know that because I just went through them today looking for something else entirely. There were probably about 6 different siting options for the building, but all of them focused the building in that upper northeast corner because the existing East York Elementary is in the west and west-south corner of the building. So there are tweaks to the design. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to do a wholesale redesign with the building in a new location while East York Elementary remains in operation.
Thank you.
I'm going to go back to the easement question. There is no definition of a structure that's open to interpretation. Am I understanding that correctly?
It's not defined within the easement.
Say that again?
Is not defined within the easement. The easement says, the grantor agrees it will not construct or maintain any building or other structure upon said easement.
So the term structure is not defined in the easement, correct?
So, whose interpretation rules? The engineer of the township that's granting approval?
I'm going to make sure I don't go sideways and say the general.
I didn't realize I was asking a.
No, it's okay. I believe the question here, I believe, around the definition of structure relates to how the ordinance reads and says that a structure, I believe that's the case. Actually, I might be muddying those two issues. I'm not sure of the language around an easement and a structure. That to me, the easement documentation would govern. I believe that the structure that we talked about is the sidewalk relative to this setback requirement.
Okay.
I'm muddying that up. I'm sorry. This is just relative to the easement. This doesn't have anything to do with the setback.
Well, what I'm puzzled about is if these things change from when it was built to now, ordinances, I guess, is the proper lingo. If that changes, but it doesn't define structure, if something's not defined in 1972 and it's not defined in 2025, it's open to interpretation. Do I have that part right?
I can answer it in part because I asked this question of Attorney Jones, and I just asked for his general experience because again, it's not defined.
Well, I promise I'm not going to nail anybody
No,
down.
but I want
for
you
a
to
general answer.
Sure. And his experience was, and he said you can speak for me on this. Typically, drives and sidewalks are permitted to cross or run parallel within stormwater easements as well as other easements. And currently, there is a paved walking path in that easement and the sidewalk curb run across the easement area. So those are two things we know. General principles of what typically happens and what is permissible and what is currently happening on the easement itself.
Okay, but now somebody woke up one morning and decided a macadam driveway is a structure, but a cement sidewalk wasn't when it was built in the 70s. Am I close?
I can't tell you what they're thinking, but that is the position that is being taken, is my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, this is, and I apologize, I kind of boogered my answer before. This is about the township is the beneficiary of the easement. They have rendered their perspective, opinion, whatever you want to call it, that says, okay, the way the easement language reads says this. There's no definition of structure in their own ordinance. Therefore, they have rendered in their perspective, it's kind of mixing the two things. It's their easement, and that says something. It's their ordinance that's silent to the structure referenced in the easement document.
Okay.
So they have rendered I would say opinion, I don't know if that's the right legal term.
Okay.
Said, our perspective is there's no definition in the ordinance. We think the structure includes any of these things. Therefore, when you look at the easement document, you can't put anything in there.
Okay. All right. Still confounding.
Sorry, I need like a whiteboard and some flashcards.
Yeah.
From that one.
No, and I appreciate, I'm not looking, I'll just reiterate, I'm not looking to, nail anybody down, I'm not gonna buzz anybody I'm just trying to understand, seeking information here. Okay, any board member? Okay, I think we're good.
Yeah, I would just like to thank everybody for the thorough, measured, informative discussion. I think that was all direct, Counselor. I don't think we got any cross-examination. I think these guys were our witnesses, right?
No, I do want to thank Dr. Krause because I did send an email requesting this specific information immediately after the correspondence was sent out. So thank you for doing that. I didn't get a response that you were doing that, but I saw it in the group email. So I appreciate you helping me out with my request to have this done.
And I want to give a shout out to all four of these gentlemen. As you can imagine, they're living and breathing night meetings. So all of them made reconditions to make this a priority. And I think as Mark mentioned in the beginning, it is an absolute demonstration of their effort, their time, their energy. All four of them have been committed since the beginning and continued through. So I appreciate that. And I think you heard that from the team this evening. So thank you.
This is information that many of us needed and wanted to hear. So again, we appreciate your time and your efforts, and don't feel left out, you two gentlemen who didn't.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
A real tiny footnote. Design is not holding up this project. There's no reason why the remaining issues shouldn't have been resolved and can't be resolved in a timely fashion. To your comment and to your comment, if there was an opportunity for an exec session, we would appreciate being included.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess just one item in conclusion. We talked a lot about the items that are outstanding, the efforts that have gone into it. The only way we're going to resolve this is through collaboration with the township. And it's going to be our directive coming out of this meeting and through the next week, this following week upcoming, to establish a meeting with the township to resolve these final items in an expeditious way. So we talked a lot about what the hurdles have been, but the path forward is through collaboration. We're committed to continue to do that.
Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks very much.
So the last items you have in my general report are an update of our meeting schedule and, of course, the enrollment report from that. Great community. Any questions relative to that larger section? Okay. The next item that I have this evening is our second read on our whistleblower policy. Based on the conversations we had last time, we made some edits. So putting that out to the team if there's any questions relative to the second.
I just had unless I clicked on the wrong link, I don't see the edit done that I mentioned last time at the bottom of page 2, where it says, acting on behalf of the employee makes a good faith report to is about to report. That jumbled sentence. On page 2, very bottom.
In the guidelines section?
Yeah, so we've got it up here on the screen. So after it's been highlighted, an immediate family member acting on behalf of the employee makes a good faith report to is about to report. Yeah.
Correct.
Wrong ones.
I apologize for that. We did link the wrong one. I was like, yeah, I just noticed it too.
Steve?
Just as a statement of general principle. If there's a conflict between a board policy and a statute, I'm assuming that there is probably some edge case where we're potentially extending a right to somebody beyond what's in the statute that doesn't attenuate the right of somebody else with rights under the statute, and that might be allowed, but in general, if the policy's in conflict with statute, statute's gonna win.
Yes, sir, and I would also say you don't need a policy in order to have a statute be the authority on a matter.
Right, agreed, and I think it's just a statement of priorities by the board. Mr. Sanders made the suggestion, I think a number of us, if not all of us, thought it was a belt and suspenders. It's a good suggestion. It's a statement of priorities and values for the board, what's in our policies, so, thank you.
Well, along those lines, I'm not clear how I phrase this now. If there is a law, this is covered by law, by statute, why, I guess is one question, do we need a policy? And B, is it creating more headaches for the district to have this policy? I hope I've been clear on what I'm asking.
I think I understand your question. I think to the first part, I think Dr. Sullivan emphasized that. I think the policies demonstrate, in essence, policies that are not required are a voice of the board to demonstrate, I think the word used was principles, it is to emphasize the things that we hold true to and measure against. Is it, I forget the exact word, use the second part, is it burdensome on the, it is not, because I believe to your point, the statute will always supersede that. It is in our 600s already, in particular this policy. And this follows with the regulations of the law. You were going to chime in.
Yeah, I think the policy also speaks to how we would operationalize.
It creates a process, yes.
Say again.
It's process oriented, it creates.
It's the how. Yeah.
We'll be sure to link the appropriate one. I apologize for that. Other questions on whistle? Okay. And that concludes my sections.
Thank you. So we will have the third reading, the vote in 30 days? Or we will have to have 30 more days, right?
Correct.
Okay, so not next board meeting, but the next one. Chief Financial and Operations Officer, Mrs. Kindig.
Good evening. I just have two brief items I wanted to share with the board this evening. The first one being a food service update. I hope to do another one in the spring just to kind of keep you all abreast of the different things that we're doing in the food service department along with Whitson's, who is our food service provider. First, some of the goals of our food service department are one, to increase student participation both through the breakfast and the lunch programs, to enhance the menu variety by launching new food choices through some pop-up events and seasonal menus, and strengthen the community relations to foster a positive and collaborative food service environment. I will say that thanks to Nicole, our Director of Accounting, she went to a conference last year where Whitson's was one of the vendors, and had some discussions with them and saw some of the great things they're doing in other schools with some pop-ups, and just our experiences with other places, different things we could be doing with our menus. We brought that to Whitson's, and they worked together really hard to kind of incorporate that into this year. So those are some neat things that we're working on doing this year. So just to take a quick look at numbers, and we only really have about a month into the school year, so it's very preliminary, but it is showing a good trend. You can see our high school saw a large increase in breakfast served in the month of September compared to last year. We did introduce convenient grab-and-go options for our high school students, and we are anticipating that that will continue to help our numbers grow there. Most of our buildings also saw some increases. There were 2 that have some dips, but again, this is just 1 month. I'm hoping when we present some information to you in the spring, we'll see that trend and we'll see some improvement there. Another thing that we're doing to increase our breakfast participation is creative contests and promotions being used to just, if you get breakfast, and we'll talk about what some of those look like, but if you participate in breakfast, you can participate in those competitions or those promotions. Our lunch participation, again, in September, not as much growth. We are seeing some increase in our high school. The first bullet there doesn't come into play with our September numbers because we didn't have an early dismissal, but one of the things that we're going to do is we didn't serve lunch on early dismissal days. So in a conversation with Dr. Ellis and Whitson's, we're bringing lunch to early dismissal days so students can grab a lunch before they leave. And then also just participation is minimal increases in some of our other buildings. It looks pretty stagnant there, but we have been seeing a decrease in the last couple of years. So I'm going to look at September as kind of a win because we didn't really lose any participation. And again, plan to track those numbers throughout the year. Some of the pop-up events we'll doing, and one of those people up there might look familiar to somebody here. But anyway, we did the Wing Shack on September 2nd, and I believe that is why our September lunches at the high school showed an increase. That was a very popular event. Chef Brad is from Whitson's. He comes in. These events are labor intensive, and all of our ladies, even in the back office for Whitson's, go out and help when these events come in. They had a ramen bowl event at the middle school, again, very popular at our middle school. And then the smoothie bike was at Valley View, and that's what you see there in the larger picture. The students get to ride the bike, blend their smoothie, and then they get a smoothie. And I will say all of these food options do meet all the nutritional requirements that we have to meet right before for school. October and November events that we have coming up that are very exciting. Sushi Day, which we had, again, was a very successful event. I myself did partake as well and can say that it was pretty yummy. We have ramen bowls coming to the high school and anticipating, and that's actually tomorrow, anticipating another successful there. It was successful at the middle school, so we expect to see the same at the high school. And a potato bar. Then at the middle school, there's Sabro's tacos and Chipotle chicken over rice with topping coming up. So again, some really exciting new and different menu items for our students. Some of the promotions that I talked about. So just today or this week, we're doing an elementary candy corn guessing contest where if you get breakfast, you get to guess how many candy corns are in the jar. And then the closest one in each building will get a prize, I think, and the runner-up as well. In our intermediate buildings, we're going to do a hot chocolate, and it's basically the hot chocolate milk, again, meeting all the nutritional standards, but the students will have an option of getting hot chocolate milk instead of cold chocolate milk. One of the seasonal items is the zombie, or if students who purchase ice cream on Halloween will receive a zombie ice cream as a special treat. And then also for our intermediate students, the toxic mac and cheese, which is just green mac and cheese with a hot Cheeto crumbles on top. I'll be anxious to see how that goes over. And then finally, just as with the community, we have an advisory committee that is comprised of staff, students, and community members to just continue looking at creative ways to engage our students in their meal options, as well as learn about nutritional aspects of what they're eating. District surveys, we do one each year to kind of get feedback on the menu items, and then that's incorporated into next year. And then trainings, both Whitson's and our district staff participate in monthly trainings focused on safety and wellness, and as well as staff engagement. And anybody have any questions?
I've said it at least once, maybe twice, so I'm going to say it again. We really need to bring back a second lunch option in elementary. Ever since COVID, we've been stuck on one. And that would help, I think, with students purchasing lunch when they have multiple options.
I just want to say hats off to the idea of providing the bag lunch on the early dismissal days. I know there are families who struggle with providing food for their families, and this is one more opportunity to help with that rather than go home on early dismissal with an empty stomach and wondering about lunch. So I think that's a great plan. Hats off.
And I will add that breakfast is still free to all students, so I highly encourage students to go grab a breakfast when they get to school. No other questions? That concludes that report. And I do apologize. Karen will give the board just a copy of the budget timeline. It's just for your reference. I failed to email it to her this morning. I thought I had, and I did not. But I just wanted to take a quick couple moments to review the budget timeline with the board. We are in that phase where we're going to start planning for the 26-27 budget. I color coded for my own help. There is a key so you understand what all my colors are. But the items that the board really would focus on are the orange, the olive green, and the green. So olive green is basically if the board were to apply for exceptions. So we would look at the index, we would feel that the index wasn't going to be enough for the tax increase, and we would need to apply for exceptions to that index. Those are all the steps that would need to be followed to go down that road. The green items, are they not distinct on up there? I'm not sure. The brighter green are if we don't go down that road and we chose the opt-out, which is what the board has done for many years, opt-out resolution. Those would be the steps that we would follow. And then the orange are the steps that we would follow regardless of whichever direction the board would want. But just to highlight quickly the key dates as we move forward. January is where we'll be reviewing the preliminary budget, and the board will have to decide in January if we're applying for exceptions or adopting the opt-out resolution and staying within the index. In February, if we were to apply for exceptions, the board would need to adopt the preliminary budget. If the opt-out resolution was approved in January, there would be no formal action then until April. In April, and again, all those board meetings in between, I would be providing the board with budget updates. In April, the board would then need to adopt a proposed final budget, and then in May, then there would be the adoption of the general fund final budget along with the tax levy and homestead farmstead resolutions. If anyone doesn't have any questions about that, that would conclude my report.
Anything else for Mrs. Kindig? Okay, thank you for that. Mrs. Iacchini is presenting on behalf of...
So I'll cover for Dr. Lorfink. I'm going to have Ms. Iacchini come up just in case there's some additional questions because she's been sitting so patiently back there. Dr. Lorfink apologizes. I think she's captured the 24-hour that's been floating around. So she sends her best. So this evening, we'd like to share a request for an FTE on a paraprofessional at Valley View. These are conversations certainly we've been having quite often about the needs of our students. And the reason why I asked Ms. Iacchini to join us is we're talking about students within the special education department and at Valley View in particular. But there have been a variety of students that have moved in the district. And in particular, I believe there are 8 new kindergarten students that have arrived with very intensive needs. And as the IEP team often does, they come together to determine the best needs of students. We evaluate, does a PCA, which is driven by an IEP, personal care system, meet the best needs of that particular student, or does a paraprofessional assigned to that student and supporting other students? And correct me if I'm wrong, that IEP team gathered, they made those decisions, and as a team they decided that the recommendation that comes to administration for a paraprofessional satisfies kind of all of those parts, and that collaborative approach is what brought the recommendation to us. Typically you'd see that recommendation coming in a planning meeting, but I think we can all agree finding quality staff, finding them in a timely process through school employment, given the nature of the way school board meetings work, the approval of those positions, the satisfying of clearances and requirements, there is a delay in that. And students' needs don't delay. They're immediate, they occur every day. So that's why you're seeing a recommendation. Ms. Iacchini, did I miss anything from the teamwork on that?
No, you did not. Yeah, I would just attest to the fluidity of adding a paraprofessional. A PCA, we're working with one student exclusively. Having one paraprofessional that we're adding to the team allows fluidity between the two classrooms at the program and to meet the needs of the teachers and the program and the student needs. So yes, that's why that was determined.
So we have this for a discussion item under Human Resources, Dr. Orfring's session to see if there's questions. We have proposed that to be an action item later in the agenda and wanted to have the team here. And as you saw from Dr. Jackson's first presentation this evening, the structure of the PBIS support all students in that first tier. This would be students that require that next tier level of support, and having this position as a paraprofessional allows us to accomplish both the individual students that have recently arrived as well as the program needs, whether it's autistic support, whether it's support within a learning support classroom, or students that are mainstreamed in the regular classrooms. Any questions for us or Ms. Ike? Dr. Mason?
Just clarifying, so these are for students with IEPs. So if we deny it, then we would be failing to meet that student's IEP, and that could open us up to legal things?
So we had a student that we were discussing the needs for, and there wasn't necessarily that it's like fully within the IEP. We were looking at the needs of the program. Would the program be best served by potentially looking at a PCA for individual students, or would the program be best served by hiring a paraprofessional that can support all of the students? And from a financial standpoint, from a program standpoint, having a new paraprofessional position that again has fluidity, whereas Valley View has 2 autistic support classrooms, that having that person be able to kind of go back and forth depending on the needs of the day, depending on the needs of the students, depending sometimes on the needs of the staff, would give that additional support in a way that could benefit all the students within our autistic support classroom.
And to that end, no IEPs have been modified to date. Did you want to comment on that as well?
But that doesn't mean that current IEPs don't indicate a need for adult support, that we may have challenges at meeting without an additional staff person.
That was going to be my second comment to your question. What will we do? We would then collapse other resources to ensure these priority students need, which means something else along the way would have to give to that end. Other questions? Thank you, Ms. Ike.
Nice to see you. Thanks for being here. We don't often get to see you, so that was
That's
nice.
why I said so patiently waiting for him there. So that does conclude Dr. Lorfing's section of the agenda this evening.
Okay. So that takes us to our action items, 9.0. The consent agenda items are listed below. Would any member like any of these items considered separately, or are there any questions on any of these items? Any?
I'd like H pulled out.
Okay, let's get them, we'll pull out H, which is the articulation agreement with Walden University. Okay, so could I get a motion for items 9.1A through G and I? Now, this is, okay, and a second, good. Before we vote on those, I wanted to address or question or point out with regard to 9.1I, the wellness courses. This is a question, a topic I chatted with Dr. Furman about just this evening, and it was a question that was asked. So just to reiterate, to say publicly, curriculum is, Dr. Furman, you're here, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, please. Living, breathing document. She's giving me the thumbs up back there. It sort of goes without saying that the curriculum will have to make certain assumptions related to the wellness curriculum depending on available facilities. For example, we can't teach swimming if we don't have a pool. Additions to the curriculum will potentially take place when the pool becomes available.
In other words, when the pool is up and running, the curriculum will be revised, revisited to potentially include elementary swimming, again, dependent on approval of the board at that time. Again, do I get a thumbs up?
Mostly, in addition to staffing, we need some water safety instructors.
Again, staffing would pertain to that, but I wanted to just publicly mention that the wellness curriculum does include swimming. We obviously don't have a pool at this moment, but when that changes, the curriculum will also change.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't say, barring any unforeseen changes by our PDE, who decides to make a change at any given time.
There you go. Okay. And now that I've said that, any board members' commentary, in anything on any of these items with regard to discussion? Okay. Are there any votes to the contrary? Hearing none, this can be considered unanimous. Now, 9.1H, with regard to the practicum articulation agreement with Walden University. Is there discussion? Oh, we need a motion. We sure do. Is there a motion for that? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Now we can talk about it. Thank you for that, Mrs. Say. Is there discussion on that item? Okay. Are there votes to the contrary? Dr. Hessen is dissenting vote. Any others? Okay. So motion passes 7-1. Okay, moving on. 10.0, additional action items. This is what we've just discussed. So moved. Can I get a second? Thank you. Any discussion? Any votes to the contrary? Hearing none, this can be unanimous. Informational items. Mrs. Fryrick, LIU, York Adams.
I have no report for the LIU, and I'm pleased to report that our numbers remain constant at the York Adams Academy, and we have a full complement of people testing every week to get in. So I'm always grateful for that addition of YAA to the educational community here in York. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Legislative update, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Madam President. You'll all be pleased to know that the Senate and House are back in session today. Pennsylvania is still without a budget. In its own exercise of chaos theory, or the underlying patterns, interconnection, and repetition that make the budget process in Harrisburg appear chaotic, when it really isn't. There's a movie about this whole process. It's called The Butterfly Effect. Those of you familiar with it? When a butterfly flaps its wings in Morocco, it leads to a tornado in Kansas. Now, the Pennsylvania version has the state legislature sitting on its hands until June. And when they take their hands away, they often come up with a budget or they don't. And when they don't, 500 districts throughout the Commonwealth and millions of children suffer the consequences in the form of hiring freezes, cuts, and contract freezes. Suburban is fortunate in the regard that we're not suffering all of the ill effects, but as Mrs. Kendig mentioned tonight, the potential is there. Is there a solution? Possibly. It would behoove all of us to write to our elected representatives, particularly our state senators, to ask them to move the budget forward so that the Commonwealth can function properly. In other news, the Senate Education Committee met to discuss cell phone use, ironclad regulation, or local flexibility, or as Shakespeare might say in Hamlet, to ban or not to ban. That is the question. Student testimony was the most illuminating on this question when one student mentioned that ironclad bans might be counterproductive since the technology in question is not done evolving. More to follow on that subject, I'm sure. HB 1405 is headed to the governor's desk. This bill allows veterans with relevant occupational experience to apply this knowledge toward the credits for a CTE Instructional Certification 1. And Senate 246, the Weapons Notification Bill, which I think we explained at the last session, is headed for the governor's desk, too. Finally, informed sources tell me a new compromise for calculating cyber charter tuition payments is before the Senate. This measure could save school districts throughout the Commonwealth an estimated $173 million annually. As a first step goes, the Senate could do worse. And knowing the Senate, they probably will. If there are no other questions, that concludes my report.
Mrs. Farrer?
Question on that 246 legislation.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the one that they will notify everybody from here to there if there's a gun appears in a school building. Is that the one? Is that the two?
Yes, it is. Gun, weapon, anything that could be interpreted as a weapon.
As a weapon, which
Yeah.
is kind of interesting. I mean, I mean,
And the school code defines a weapon.
a weapon, but it wasn't just that. It was, the number of people they want, and, the kids would want it because they wanted to be able to notify their parents. That's why they want their parents wanted to have this. That's not always the best thing to do because, we have to organize and stay very vigilant at the scene itself. So I'm kind of curious as to whether that's going to present some interesting discussions, at least at the local school districts, as to, what is the order of who is, notified. Just a thought.
Actually, funny you should mention, not funny you should mention, Mrs. Fryer, but it was actually, it wasn't exactly similar, but an incident in another school district out west, and this came up in the context of the cell phone usage hearing, where there was one school that was located 3 blocks from a gun shop. And somebody went in and purchased a firearm. Now, it wasn't on school grounds, but a parent or a citizen saw this man walking out with a firearm and immediately started texting acquaintances. Pandemonium broke loose in the school, and the superintendent was getting calls about a perpetrator with an assault rifle advancing on the school. It turned out somebody did walk into a gun shop and did purchase a firearm. It was a reproduction flintlock musket. So, yeah, problems can abound. The proof will be in the pudding, as they say.
Well, I just think, you have another, there is a real crisis. We have standing orders of operation here. I'm sure New York Suburban is all school districts do. Well, 911, call parents. You have to follow whatever your district will decide. Just something.
We cannot hear you, ma'am.
Point taken.
Sorry.
Thank you. Mrs. Kindig, is there a York Adams Tax Bureau report tonight?
Not tonight, there was a meeting this evening, so I'll be discussing that with Mrs. Ryan. If there's anything to report, I will have it next time.
Okay, thanks very much. As far as the York County School of Technology report goes, at our meeting last week, we heard a presentation about a recent professional development day that focused on artificial intelligence. The School of Technology is focusing their professional development on that topic this year. Presentations at each of the member districts' middle schools are almost complete, and the administration will be meeting with counselors from each district to discuss and clarify information surrounding the enrollment and selection process. School of Technology had its homecoming this past weekend, and by all accounts, homecoming was a success. Preparations are underway for winter sports, including the first year of girls wrestling at the School of Technology. There was discussion about the budget for next school year. It's my understanding the administrations from all the districts and district superintendents and business managers have heard from the School of Technology administration with regard to next year's budget, have had opportunity to answer questions. Unless you have questions for me, that concludes my report. I'd like to recognize our visitors this evening. Thank you all for being with us. That brings us to the second opportunity for public comment. Same rules apply. Public comment period is an opportunity to be heard by the board on agenda items or other items which may reasonably come before the board. Comments are to be directed to the entire board, not one individual board member, administrator, staff member, or to the audience. Comments will be timed and limited to 3 minutes or less. Please note, board and staff members will not normally respond to comments or questions during the meeting. When you hear your name called, please come forward. You do not need to state your name or address before sharing your remarks. Kathy Schaefer, Spring Garden Township, you're passing. Okay, that concludes then that opportunity. Is there anything from the board for the good of the order? I would like to offer a shout out to Mrs. Marcella Oathout, high school English teacher and club advisor. Student members of NHS, as Macaulay reported earlier, and the Diversity and Activism Club took their time out of their weekend to provide and serve a meal for members of our community who are experiencing food and housing insecurity. It's my understanding some 150 meals were served in a fairly short period of time. I saw some familiar faces in the social media post, including our former student board representative, Nicole Escano Enriquez. Shout out to Nicole. These students and their advisors obviously could have spent their Saturday morning doing other things, but they saw a need and they did the work. Family and consumer science faculty and students joined forces by making more than 100 sandwiches to share. We offer our thanks to them for representing York Suburban in such a terrific way, and offer our thanks to the merchants who either donated food or offered it at significant discount. That would include Flinchball Orchards, Hearst Snacks, and Memory Lane Pizza. Again, thanks to all of you for caring about your community and for representing York Suburban in such a stellar way. Anybody else? Okay. Thanks, everybody. We can be adjourned.